Hey, it's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is a place to be for education about asexuality, covering dating, relationships, love, life, self-love, confidence, and so much more. So subscribe and hit that bell icon now. So tonight I've got a very special episode. We're discussing the pros and cons of dating a feminine guy. So first of all, what is a feminine guy? What are the type of qualities that a guy who has feminine traits would display? So there's a lot of people in the asexual community, I have to say, that are trans and non-binary. This isn't a person that necessarily usually would identify as trans or non-binary. This is a guy who has some feminine traits. Now, sometimes, a lot of the time, society may frown on guys who've got feminine traits, but you can find these type of guys on dating sites, and it requires some knowledge and insight into what a guy who's feminine may look like, or the qualities he may possess. And how do I know about this? Because I've known people who are guys and know people who are guys with feminine traits. Have a very dear friend who has feminine traits. Right, so let's crack on. So a guy who has feminine traits, what am I talking about? A guy who has feminine traits would likely be more submissive. He would likely want to please more, and he would likely maybe find it hard to do some things that traditional guys would do. He may have hobbies and interests that are more feminine, so more artsy, more craftsy, may like knitting, crocheting, sewing, cooking, things that are traditionally seen as a female role around the house, doing housework, cooking, cleaning, for example, all this type of thing. He may take a lot of pleasure and pride in. So where traditional gender roles, the man kind of goes out to work and he leaves the woman to do the housework type of stuff. This is really old school now, but there's still a lot of guys out there that want this and expect this, right? Because they'd rather a woman just do all the housework because they can be lazy ass, basically, a lot of the time, right? But anyway, moving on from that. So a guy with feminine traits will more likely want to do, or be happy to do, or even take pleasure in doing some of the things that traditionally would have been what a woman would do, which is cooking, cleaning, housework, shopping. They may in fact prefer to stay at home, and if in a relationship, be the one that takes care of the house or home, rather than going out to work, and their partner, they'd rather go out to work if there was a scenario where that one of them needs to work. They would be usually likely to have a lot of more female friends, or have an inclination towards female positivity, maybe even feminism, and be more inclined to see things from a female point of view, be more inclined to be emotional, be more inclined to be sensitive and empathetic. This is not always the case. You can get guys that have some feminine traits. For example, they like to be dominated, they like to be submissive, but they don't actually have the empathy or sensitivity to go with it. You can find these guys on dating sites, for example, that are into BDSM stuff. There are a number of guys that like BDSM stuff where they like the woman to be dominant in sexual activities, and they would rather be the submissive one. You can find this on dating sites, which is not necessarily a sexual thing, but if a heterosexual is involved, then it likely is sexual. But you can find guys who want to do housework for a woman. They want to take care of a woman in that way. So a masculine guy would more likely want to take care of a woman financially, would more likely want to take care of a woman in terms of DIY, like as in fixing a light switch that's faulty, doing plumbing, electrical stuff, more do it yourself type of stuff. A feminine guy would more like want to do the housework than DIY stuff. So you've got pros and cons to this, obviously, because if you are female yourself and you are interested in maybe exploring whether it'd be good for you to be with a guy who's feminine, for example, you could end up with a situation where domestically, if you're not masculine, if you're feminine as well, then potentially, you can't get stuff done like DIY stuff unless you employ someone if you're not DIY inclined yourself. So, for example, when I moved homes, I am not well, I never had an experience of building flat pack furniture before. And so it's an absolute nightmare. So it was me and my two friends doing it. And well, one of my friends at the time, I should say, I'm no longer in touch with them. They've gone back to their own country now. But they were building it with me and we didn't have a clue what we're doing, right? But mostly it was me and the girl that was doing it for quite a long time. And then my guy friend helped me. But my guy friend, he is actually much more into doing housework than he is in DIY. DIY is not his thing because he is more feminine. And I think, for me personally, because I got fibromyalgia, which is a disability, chronic pain condition, affects the nerves and muscles of the body, I have problems doing housework. It really hurts me. So it helps I'm not dating my friend, by the way. I just want to point that out. But it does help having a friend, an amazing best friend who does housework for me because he likes doing that for me. And that is really nice because that's something that really I struggle with a lot because it just makes my thyroid pain so much worse. So if you have disabilities like I do, and they are geared towards the fact that it's hard to do housework, it's hard to do household tasks like cooking, cleaning, washing up, this type of thing, and you have a feminine guy, for example, I mean, that's my friend, not relationship, but say you are looking to date or get into a relationship and you found a feminine guy who liked doing housework and cooking and cleaning and like being more like a serving you, if you know what I mean. They're more like the maid, if you know what I mean. They're more like the servant. They're more like serving you. They're more like helping you, whichever one you want to describe it. Like people who are into BDSM, they sometimes like being called servant and slave and all these type of very interesting things. I will put it like that. So it depends what type of thing they want. Whereas, some might have the mindset that's really horrible calling someone that. So they just say they want to help you, then that could work out well if you've got disabilities where your kind of, I don't want to say weaknesses, but the things you can't do or not able to do as much, that the feminine guy would like doing that and he would find it pleasing and enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Then you basically complement each other in that way. But obviously, if you both have a lot of both feminine traits and you both don't know what to do in terms of DIY, in terms of if something goes wrong with the shower or something goes wrong with your heating or something goes wrong with just like your light bulb or something goes wrong with like some sort of DIY like the furniture, flat pack furniture scenario, then that might be harder because you can't do it, they can't do it. So then you have to employ someone to do it. Whereas if you had a more masculine guy, he probably more likely know how to do that. He'd be more of a guy who's into tools, who's into building stuff, who's into DIY and that type of thing, right? Of course, there's women who can do DIY. There's women with more masculine traits, but I'm focusing on a guy with feminine traits tonight specifically, right? And if you are looking to date or get into a relationship with a feminine guy, these are the type of things you need to know. There's pros and there's cons, right? If you're looking to date and get into a relationship with a feminine guy, because a lot of feminine guys, they will tend to have, in my experience, well, my best friend, he's got predominantly male friends, but even though he has some feminine qualities, but my the people I've known, for example, on dating sites and for a potential relationship, guys that are feminine, they tend to have a lot of female friends. Now, you might think personally or feel personally threatened by that if you're a female and they've got all female friends, if you're the type of person that gets jealous a lot, you might feel threatened by the fact nearly all, if not all, that person's friends is female, because you might feel like, oh, there's always someone to take my place there. But obviously, they're usually not in a relationship with their friends for a reason, because their friends aren't suitable for a relationship. They probably not that interested in a feminine guy. They probably love him as a friend, probably like a great big deep friendship they have with him, and they can confide in him, and they can, be themselves around him, because it's like talking to a girlfriend, but they don't actually want that type of guy to be in a relationship with, because they'd rather a masculine guy, right? So that's why usually these guys may not end up with one of their friends. They might end, they still pursue a relationship with someone else. However, you have to be aware that they could be very, very close to their female friends. They could be bordering on the fact that, well, what is the difference between you being in a relationship with me or them? The intimate stuff, probably that's going to be the only difference in some cases. And if they're really into having a lot of female friends, also they could have a very high degree of feeling like they need to help women, because a lot of feminine guys who are submissive, for example, they like to help a lot of women. And if any of their women friends are in need, they might go and see them and go to their aid very quickly. And that can be not good in a relationship. There has to be boundaries. And you can find that some feminine guys don't have enough boundaries with other women, right? There has to be a cutoff point. There has to be like, no, I'm in a relationship. And obviously, I help my friends to a certain extent, but there has to be like scenarios where the other women friends that they've got also are able to rely on other people, not just your guy, for example, who you're in a relationship with. If you're in a relationship with that person, there has to be a cutoff. If he's just going around people pleasing all the women, then not only is he feminine, he's got people pleasing qualities, and it's specifically geared towards other women. So that could become very problematic in your relationship, where, a girl's on the other end of the phone crying, oh, blah, 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 so and so was horrible to me at the office today, and he goes running off to her, right? This isn't really suitable a lot of the time for a relationship, because it can get too much. It can get to feeling like, hang on a minute, is that your friend or is that another girlfriend? Because a lot of the time, feminine guys, they don't know when to say no to other women. They can be so empathetic and sympathetic, or so geared towards their female friends that they're there for them at the drop of a hat. They're people pleasers. Not all feminine guys are like this, but you can find a number of them like this. And so that can be very, very difficult when you are trying to have a relationship with that person, because they're forever like comforting their other female friends. And it can be like, hang on a minute, there needs to be boundaries in place. There needs to be a cutoff. You know, if you are spending a night together and they're just going off with their female friend because someone's got a dilemma, women can be very manipulative. And the problem with some feminine guys is they don't understand this, or they don't see it, or they don't want to see it. They're blind to it, right? And women can very often easily manipulate guys who've got feminine traits, because a lot of guys with feminine traits are more geared towards thinking women are good, and they're sweet, and they're innocent, and they're kind, and they're caring, and that's why they like them. And they like being feminine like that because they like those qualities in women, and so they portray them in themselves because they like the qualities. They're like reflecting the qualities of a woman within themselves back to the woman. Does that make sense? So they are like a reflection of how the woman's behaving with them back to the woman, right? But they don't understand a lot of the time that women can be very manipulative, very nasty, very controlling, very possessive. They don't see the bad side often to women. And there can be some women, especially if it's any of their exes, that they often still keep in touch with their exes. And this is a very bad thing if you're in a relationship, right? Because they can often, go to the exes at a drop of a hat. You don't want that scenario. Really, most people, in my personal opinion, should be cutting off from their exes in the majority of cases, because this, when I talk about exes, means in a relationship with them. But obviously, if they got children with their ex, they can't do that. unless your children are really grown up, and then they don't have to have as much contact with them. But if they got children, they can't cut off their ex completely. I mean, some exes are gonna like not be in the country or not around, um, but they're gonna have some contact with their ex if they got kids, usually, unless their ex has died and they're a widow or something, or they just, like they're a partner and their partner's died, basically, which can happen. But more times than not, they're going to be contacting their ex, and you can find that feminine guys cannot let their ex go, right? It's like the ex has got this control over them. And it's because, in my personal opinion, they have some feminine qualities where they can't really see the bad side of women. They can't really say no. They don't have that degree of control and ability to cut them off. And so this can be very difficult, right? So the pros of being with a feminine guy, a lot of the time, I'm not saying all feminine guys are like this, because it isn't true. And also some guys are submissive, but it doesn't mean to say they're necessarily fully feminine. They might have some feminine qualities, but a lot of the time the guys are submissive, they are feminine in some ways, but sometimes it can just be in the bedroom that they're submissive. And I've come across guys on dating sites that are submissive. They say they're submissive, yet to my mind, they're not really submissive. Because if I then said, okay, so why did you take like 2 hours to speak, to message me back then, or whatever, or why didn't you answer me when we're in the middle of a conversation? They'll make up some excuse. To me, that's not a submissive guy. To me, an actual submissive guy wants to please his woman, wants to please someone in a dating scenario. But I'm not into BDSM stuff, so I don't really get it. But what I do know is I do know guys with feminine traits. That's why I'm not really going down the BDSM route that much, because I don't know enough about BDSM, because I don't partake in it. But I do get approached by guys who are submissive, but they like BDSM stuff, because they think I'm a dominatrix potential type of person. But I don't really understand how to do that or be that, because I don't want to control a guy, you know. And a lot of the time that's to do with sexual stuff, even if they turn around and say, oh, it's not, if they're heterosexual, it usually is. I understand there's some asexuals that have BDSM stuff that is non-penetrative sex related. But for a lot of people who are heterosexual, it involves some sexual acts and often sex in some ways, right? But obviously, if you're talking about sexuals and you're an asexual who is sex positive or sex neutral, doesn't care about whether they have sex or not, then, you might prefer to have a guy who's more submissive in the bedroom, because it might help you to feel more in control of the situation. And as an asexual person, often the asexuals that do have sex do not want to be partaking in it as much as a sexual person would. They would want to negotiate times they do it. In the experience I've got, for example, in the Asexual Perspectives book, this is what the type of thing they say. They negotiate when to do sex, when to have sex, because they can't have it as much as their partner all the time. It's just too much for them. But if you've got like more of a submissive person, that could work out very well in your favor, because you're more in control of the times that you say and do, and they'll be more likely to, like say whenever you want, whenever you can do that. They're more likely to have you want whatever you want done to them as well. You know what I mean? Guys who are submissive tend to prefer the woman, if they're with a woman, for example, because it might be the same sex relationship. But if they're with a woman, for example, they like the woman to be on top, having sex or kissing them. They like the woman to basically do the things the guy does. So the woman like undress the guy, the woman do whatever to the guy, the woman sit on the guy's lap, the woman tell the guy to kiss her now, the woman, like taking control more of the relationship. And obviously that spills into everyday life. So if you've got a more feminine guy, say the feminine guy is more submissive, then he would be looking more to have a female that would lead him. You have to be able to lead, usually, to some extent, a feminine guy, right? Depends how feminine he is and how submissive he is. If he's just got some feminine traits, like he likes flowers, he likes knitting, he likes doing cooking, he likes cleaning, then that's not necessarily true. But if you've got a guy who's feminine and submissive, they tend to need someone to give them direction and leadership and tell them what to do. So, for example, if you want that person to do cooking for you, you'd have to explain what you want cooking, how you want it cooked, and what cooking utensils they can use where they are if you don't live together, for example, right? The person would need to know and be given directions on how to do something. Because if they're submissive and feminine, often they want a leader to lead them. They want a more masculine person, right? So if you're a female who's got more masculine traits, you'd be better suited in some ways to a feminine guy or feminine gender, whatever gender you're interested in. If you're if you're a masculine female but attracted to women, I'm not attracted to women, then you'd be better with a feminine woman often. But some, same sex relationships, you can have switching where sometimes one person's more submissive and then other times another person is. But this live stream's all about we're talking about guys in this specifically, right? Because I think it's not talked about enough. And I want you to know that if you are a guy who's got some feminine traits, it is okay. It is perfectly fine. And what I want you to do is to admit that to yourself and start working with that. Because the thing is, if you're hiding that and you're pretending, oh, it's got something in my eye. If you're pretending that you're not who you actually are, it's going to hinder you in dating and relationships. You're not going to be fully yourself. You're going to start getting worried about things. You're not going to feel like you're you. You're going to feel like no one loves you for who you are. No one cares about you for who you are. And you'll feel unaccepted and maybe shunned by society. You might feel like there's no point in dating. But there are women out there who are more masculine and who are attracted to guys with feminine traits. I get attracted to guys with some feminine traits because I have some masculine traits. I'm still female. I identify as female, signed female at birth, but I do have some masculine traits, as in I do have leadership qualities. I do get shit done. I am very direct in what I say, very blunt sometimes. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And so I am directional. So, but, like, even with my friend, when I was originally explaining to him what I need to do in terms of like housework, friend, not dating scenario, it was difficult for me at first because I'm not used to giving orders, if you like, in a domestic scenario. I'm not used to saying this is what I want. But actually, he told me this is what he needs. He's like, I need you to tell me what you want done, how you want it done, with what, And so, in terms of dating and relationship, if you get into a relationship with a guy, if you're a feminine woman, you might find that really off-putting, like, oh, I don't want to tell a guy what to do. You should just know what to do. Well, newsflash, no one knows what to do in the way you like it done unless you tell them, right? And if you don't care and you just want them to do it their way, that's fair enough. But if you like things done a specific way, say you've been living on your own a long time. I mean, I've been living on my own for years. I do get used to having things done in a certain way. And if someone comes and interrupts all that, it just makes me feel weird. And it's like, this isn't efficient for me because this is not the way I work. So a feminine guy usually wants to please a woman more, usually wants to do things for her, housework and all this type of thing. But you'll have to talk to the person individually about what the feminine traits they have and how they work for them. They might not even know. There's some guys, I guess, that don't even know they have that enough, or don't even know they have a lot of feminine traits, should I say. But some guys can like flowers, some guys can like chocolate, some guys can like, I said like a lot of home stuff. In the past, I've given my ex, last long-term ex flowers, but he didn't appreciate them, right? Because he didn't really have that. Well, he probably didn't have any feminine qualities. His hair's probably was the most feminine thing. That was it, because he had long hair. But not always, but the majority of the time I was with him. So, you know what I mean? He didn't really appreciate flowers. But, if I was to buy flowers for a feminine guy, he'd probably really appreciate them, or chocolates, or like bought him like a little gift, because that's like a feminine thing more. Like women like, in general, women like being bought flowers or chocolates. I mean, I can't have normal chocolate, so it's no good if a guy buys me normal chocolate. It'd be better for him to say like, What chocolate can I get and where? See, a more feminine guy would say, okay, what do you want for your birthday? What do you want for your Christmas? Go and tell me exactly the thing you want and I'll get it for you. Like, tell me the flowers you want. Tell me the chocolates you like, because they're more submissive. They're more feminine. This is providing the guy's feminine, submissive type intertwined. They're more likely to want you to direct them and tell them what you like, which is great because you're more likely to get gifts for Christmas and birthday that you really like and enjoy, right? Rather than something that they've wrapped up and you're like, what the hell is that? Having said this, my ex was very good at giving me gifts, but he always used to pay attention to what I liked. And he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't feminine, I wouldn't say, apart from a bit in his looks. But I very much do like the fact of being asked what I like, because then you're going to get something that is good. But I do like it when a guy, in a relationship actually listens to what I say that I want, and then he goes and just gets it without me even telling him. I do like that as well. But feminine guys, they can be more understanding, they can be more compassionate, they can be more empathetic because they're more soft and gentle. But obviously, this could be difficult if you've got a crisis going on. This could be difficult if there's some sort of thing that's very heartbreaking happen, because they are more emotional. So you can't really, if you're a really feminine person who needs to lean on a guy emotionally, you can't do that as much in terms of like he might get emotional as well. So you have to understand that your emotions will affect him and vice versa. But in a healthy relationship, in a committed relationship, in a lifelong commitment, you are going to affect each other if you really love each other, no matter whether you're feminine, masculine, or whatever. Because if you genuinely love a person and you have compassion and empathy, which are good traits to have, whatever gender you are, which you really need these days, then you are going to feel the other person's pain if they're upset. This is how you can tell if someone really loves and cares about you, is if you are dealing with a crisis or something that's very difficult for you in your life and you're really upset. If the person feels your pain, it still doesn't mean to say they can't get on with their life, but they kind of stop and pause, and it's like, like, how are you doing? Like, how are you feeling? Like, I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm here. Let me know if I can do anything to help. This is someone who genuinely loves and cares about you. Could even be a friend, right? Because, you do get affected by someone. You don't want that person to be in pain if you genuinely care about someone. You want to protect them. You want to care about them, regardless of what gender you are. However, if you're a more masculine guy, you tend to take on more of the role of a protector of a lot of things. So if you're a more masculine guy, you'd be expected to be the protector of, like, financial protector often, protector of, like, the security with the home, protector of, like, a woman not having to, like, change it, like, well, a lot of women can change light bulbs and do stuff for themselves these days, but, like, say she got a car, the woman, the guy would be doing the car up for her, doing the mechanical bit for her. Guy would be doing maybe DIY for her, painting and stuff like this, decorating. A lot of women obviously can do that stuff these days. Things have changed and moved on. But I'm just saying, as a more masculine role, it's protector. A lot of the time, a masculine role as well is to protect his woman from other women hurting her, which is something you might not get with a feminine guy as much, if at all. And that can be a bad thing, because the role of a guy in society and the modern world, a healthy masculine guy, not a toxic masculine guy, a healthy masculine guy, his role is to protect the woman. And this includes protecting her from other women hurting her. So if a woman came on to him, for example, he'd be like, no, I've got my missus, that's it. Like, what do you think you're doing? And just by his aura, he probably wouldn't even have to say anything. He'd be like, I've got my woman, and the other women would probably know to kind of, like, keep their distance. But you could still have women friends, but you'd be very strongly boundary driven. I find the problem with a lot of feminine guys is they're not boundary driven enough. This means they go around liking a lot of women. They might be messaging a lot of women. They might be texting a lot of women. My friend doesn't actually do this, actually, but he's more into guys. But you know what I mean? From my experience of other guys in a dating relationship scenario, they can be messaging a lot of women. They can be very subservient to more than one woman. They can be, like, people pleasing women. And I don't like that side of the feminine guy. I like a guy personally to be boundary driven with other women. So I know that I have complete peace of mind and security that he's not going to go off with another woman, not going to be flirting with her. She's not going to drop her, like phone up and 5 minutes later he's off round our house and stuff like this because she's like, oh, I can't deal with stuff on my own. I don't want to be with a guy who hasn't got strong boundaries with other women. If he's not in a relationship with her, she should ideally the majority of the time be sorting her own life out with her own other friends and with a guy if she's in a relationship with another guy, right? So yeah, I think there's some good qualities of feminine guys, like, the helping around the house, often being empathetic, can often understand a woman's needs more, can feel like you're talking to a female friend, like a best female friend. And it's easier to talk to guys like that often about female stuff, like female clothes, take the guy clothes shopping with you, talk about, if you want to talk about housework stuff, if you're into, female type of hobbies, more like you can talk to the guy about periods and how you feel about pregnancy, abortion, marriage, and all these type of hard-hitting things. You could probably have like a much more easygoing conversation with this type of feminine guy because he's more open and free to thinking about feminine and female issues. But when it comes to like being boundary driven with other women, that can be problematic, and they can not know when to say no to other women, and they can be too much people pleasing multiple women at once. And maybe there's a scenario where they haven't even gotten over their ex and they can't say no to their ex, and then they end up with a lot of relationship and dating problems because a lot of women can end up seeing through that and they get fed up with it and walk off. It's like, you want your ex, you're pleasing her, right? You're either pleasing me or you're pleasing her. You're not doing it pleasing both of us. You know what I'm saying? So in my opinion, exes should be exes, as a whole. And they should certainly have their own life. You shouldn't be still going back helping your ex out with crises that oh, I'm in a crisis now, help me. You know what I mean? Obviously, it depends on the scenario, it depends on the people involved, you know, and the situation. If they've got children, then that's different. If the kid's sick, they have to go rushing, they've got children involved, right? But, you know, in general, I do find there's a problem with these guys having boundaries with other women. They might even be messaging and texting them like kisses and hearts and stuff like that. It's not every feminine guy's like this, though. Some guys have feminine traits, they have female friends, and they're very close to them, but they still have some degree of agency, as in they're still their own man, they still want to lead their own life, they still want to do things that make them happy, and they're not totally driven by a woman or by their female friends. Some guys do have guy friends as well, but I tend to find that they much more come with a positive attitude towards women, which you might think's great, but there are some women who I've experienced who I know are two-faced, who are liars, who manipulators, and this is not often talked about. And I've seen guys who just cannot see for themselves that this is a manipulative woman. I mean, you could take a very kind of extreme example where on Facebook, right? There's tons of semi-naked women on Facebook. And a guy can't even say no to that. He's like, oh, well, she got in my friends list. I don't know how she got there. Well, she's a follower. I'm like, well, you can block her. Oh, I can't do that. No, no, it's all about love, loving everyone. It's just bullshit, right? You know what I mean? You can love someone but still not have them in your life, right? And it's like, why are you going around loving all these women anyway? You know what I mean? There's a difference between kind of like being loving people as in human to human and just kind of like, not having any boundaries, in my opinion, right? So I think if a guy has feminine traits, he needs to lean into them and accept them about himself. And he needs to find people who will accept that about him as well. And he needs to just be himself and understand that it's okay, especially in this modern day and age now, to have feminine traits. There's guys, I'm sure, for years that have been having feminine traits, but they've kept them under wraps. But now guys can be more of themselves, and there's nothing wrong with having some feminine traits. It can be nice to have someone in a relationship or dating scenario where he understands you more because he is more feminine. And if you're a female yourself, it's like, wow, this person understands me more. This person's very kind and caring. This person's very loving. Who'll do anything to help me. Obviously, you might have the scenario where if they're people pleasing a lot of other people, then that's difficult. People pleasing in general is not a great trait, because you know what I mean. If they're doing anything for anyone, it means they can get very taken advantage of, and that can make them frustrated and angry and pissed off and upset, because people take advantage of these people. Because people pleasing is not a good thing, in the sense you're never actually stating who you are and what you want and what you don't want. And that's the other danger, if a guy's very feminine, he might not be able to express himself very well in his own wants, needs, and desires. So he might just go along with what you want, and so you never really know what he's thinking or feeling, and therefore you could find the relationship difficult. Like, you could find it more like you're the main show, if you like. You're the main crux of the relationship or dating scenario, and you can kind of be like feeling a bit disconnected. So you need to get the guy to open up more in that case. If you've got a feminine guy but he's quite closed or shut off to talking about himself because he's a people pleaser and he's more into hearing about you and your day, and it's great to have someone who's receptive, understanding, wanting to know about you, but it has to be more equal. And it can start feeling disconnected, like you're the one doing the talking, you're the one who his life's revolving around, but you don't know enough about him himself, right? You don't really know what he does in terms of his day. You don't really know what friends he hangs around with so much. You don't really understand him enough. And so in that case, it requires more in-depth conversation and communication, and say, hey, I want to know about you as well. I want to know about your day. Because he might be a guy that's come from a background where his needs weren't being met. And he might come from a background where he had to take care of his female siblings, for example. Or maybe his parents were divorced and he was taking care of his mother a lot. This is how guys can end up being a lot more feminine, because they have a lot more females in their family, and maybe the males in their life abandoned them or were horrible to them. They had traumatic experiences with guys. So they end up feeling that females are a lot more safer, a lot more kinder, a lot more caring, and they embody some of those traits because they're predominantly around females. So that's what they learn. They learn female behaviors, they learn female ways of being, and they learn female ways of doing things. And so therefore, that's how they can be more feminine. If you're looking for a logical explanation as to why some guys are more feminine, that's it, because they're more geared towards looking after their female members, being around female members. And it's especially true, I would say, of guys who end up living with their mothers because the dads left them, or they've got a divorce. Hello, Jonathan. Lots of love. Nice to see you. So this is how they can end up a lot more feminine. But you have to understand that they can, because of that background, they can end up being people pleasers to the point where they have not got their own needs being met, and they might not even be thinking of their own needs. And whilst that's, you could say, oh, well, if the guy's just thinking of my needs, that's great. It's not healthy if they're not expressing their own needs and wants and desires as well, especially it can get to the scenario where they do actually end up being resentful, but don't say it, or don't say it in, they don't express it enough. They bottle it up and suppress and repress, and they can get resentful if you're not careful. So you need to encourage them to open up. So if you have got a feminine guy and he is doing housework and cooking and cleaning for you, and he wants to be submissive, he wants to do that type of thing, you still have to ask him, how are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling doing that for me? And you need to praise them and say, that's really good, because guys who are feminine and submissive, they need praise. They need positive words of affirmation. They need, to know that they're doing a good job. They need to be thanked often. I mean, obviously, if you're into real BDSM stuff, that's a different kettle of fish, where some guys might like to be mean, and not want thanks and stuff. I'm not talking about BDSM stuff because I'm not involved in that. But, I know in BDSM settings, there's some people like to be spanked. Some people like to be treated not very good with the way you speak to them and stuff. I personally cannot speak to someone badly like that, In my experience of dealing with feminine guys, they need direction. They need leadership. They need to know what they're doing when. They may get more emotional and sensitive in scenarios where masculine men traditionally wouldn't, and they need praise for when they've done a good job. It depends on what mindset they've got and where they're coming from. But for some guys, it's very important to have words of affirmation, which praise is, right? It's thanking them for the job they've done. So if they do like cooking, cleaning, housework for you, and if they are submissive, and if they are a people pleaser, and because we have to deal with the person they are, regardless of where people pleasing is a good thing or not. If they are a people pleaser and that's ingrained into them for years, then people who please people, they often want praise, recognition, thanks, and to feel good for doing something for someone. So in these scenarios, you do need to praise the person and say thank you and recognize that. But you also need to ask how they're feeling, because they might not be telling you. You know, you need to recognize that they might be bedding, they might be keeping their feelings down and not expressing themselves enough. So you need to understand that, because a lot of, people in life, they get suppressed and repressed. And especially if they got feminine traits, say they did have a dad that was not good, that the parents are divorced, just say this scenario. So they're with the mother a lot. Say they've got like 3 sisters. They're with females all the time, right? Say they are people pleasing. They're doing cooking and cleaning, housework. Maybe they're packing the lunch up. They're the older one, for example, packing their lunch up for their 2 younger sisters. Maybe they're taking them to school. Depends on the scenario. But if you just think about this scenario, it's all about doing stuff. But being a doer and doing stuff for other people and people pleasing and being submissive and subservient, it can end up with them bottling a lot of emotions up and their own thoughts and the feelings within them. And so this is why hello everyone in chat, this is why you need to be actually asking them, how are they feeling when they do something for you. You need to praise them so they know it's good, especially if they say stuff like, I like helping you. If they use the words, I like helping you, you then know that they're a helper and they want praise for helping you. And they want to hear the words, you've helped me today, because that will make them satisfied and happy, right? So listen to the language that the feminine guy gives you and what he tells you. Listen to what makes him feel good about himself. Listen to what makes him feel great. Jonathan, it is really good. It is really up to you. Is it really up to you to ask? I would say it's up to them to communicate. No, it's up to you to ask them. In any healthy relationship, regardless of feminine qualities or not, any healthy relationship, you should both be checking in with each other and asking how the other person's doing. If you take the highly successful, healthy relationships in the world, they are checking in with each other, even as friends. Hey, how do you feel our friendship's going? How do you feel we're communicating? How are you feeling? Is there anything else, anything I can do to improve our friendship or relationship? Because healthy relationships are all about facing head on things that people don't want to discuss, the hidden things. And, in friendships, we should be checking in with our friends saying, hey, how you're feeling. But this works both ways. If all you've got is one friend checking in with the other friend, worried and concerned about how they're feeling and not the other person, this doesn't work well, right? This ends up with one person, the friendship, caring more about the other. But obviously I'm talking about dating scenario predominantly in this video. But you should always be checking in. And if you do have a feminine guy who's subservient and submissive, then yes, definitely, then you need to check in with how they're feeling. If, to my knowledge, in BDSM, you still need to be checking with the person of how they're feeling, doing what they're doing for you. I'm not a BDSM person, but a little that I do know about it, obviously they have a safe word for stop. And I think you still need to be checking in with them, how they're feeling. It depends what type of BDSM I guess you're into. I'm not personally into BDSM. It's not something I've studied a lot about. I have, one of my friends is into that type of thing. And I did know someone in my old job that was into that, not asexual in my old job. So, you still, in any healthy relationship, you need open, honest communication to ask the other person how they're feeling, right? But if it's only you caring about how they're feeling, this is one-sided. This is not good. If you're always the one who's caring about their feelings, you're always the one who's kind of apologizing to them if you've done something wrong. You're always the one who's, like wanting to see them and speak to them and spend time with them, then something's really up there. It's not good. And you'll probably find out down the line that it's not suitable for you. It's not healthy. But yeah, if you've got a submissive guy, especially a guy who likes doing housework, cooking and clean, looking after you, you need to ask that person, like, like praise the person and ask them, like, how's it going? Are you happy to do this for me? I don't just like, if my best friend, for example, is doing housework, cooking and cleaning, I don't just say, tell him to get on with it and expect him to do it and not check in how he's doing, how he's feeling, because, he has his own feelings and emotions of when he's doing that. And you have to understand that feminine guys are often a lot more sensitive. So things that they do for you and what you say impacts them a lot more. They're not a guy down the pub who's going around shrugging things off and letting water fly off a duck's back or whatever. They are taking care of what they say. They're usually thinking about what they do. They're usually, more sensitive, and they're usually more feeling. But having said that, they can bottle their feelings a lot because it depends where their feminine traits came from. If their feminine traits came from the fact they were in a family where they had to take care of the females in the family a lot because the dad wasn't around or the dad was abusive, then they can be made to feel, because this goes on to childhood trauma and stuff, they can be made to feel that their feelings don't matter. So they have to do things for other people, be subservient in that, to get along in the world, to feel good about themselves, to help their family female members. So it's all, they're getting positive emotions from that. But they can repress and suppress our emotions because they're taking care of someone else. And that is true of any caretaking role. You think about care, you think about carers who care for disabled people, who care for people who've got dementia and that. They're often suppressing and repressing their own emotions, aren't they? They're not really coming out with what's on their mind. So, you have to, in any scenarios, ask the person how they're feeling, how they're doing. I can, like, be having someone do something for me all the time with not asking them, like, how is it feeling? How's it going? How are you feeling? You know what I mean? Can asexual guys be feminine too? Yes. There are a number of asexual guys who are feminine, I would say. Um, an asexual guy who's feminine would, is not that much different to a heterosexual guy who's feminine, but a heterosexual guy who's feminine would more likely be feminine in the bedroom, with sex. Like, so some asexuals do have sex, but in the main, a lot of asexuals, they're not interested in it, don't want it, don't need it, don't get the urge for it, right? If we're talking about pure asexuals, most don't have sex, but some do to please their partner or because they like the sensations, even if they're not sexually attracted. So a guy who's asexual, for example, got feminine traits, who's sex repulsed, he would probably do all the things that a heterosexual guy would do, but he wouldn't need the sex part, right? But like, even in a kissing scenario, if a guy's more feminine in kissing and romance, he might like the woman. If he's attracted to women, he might like a woman to, like, hold his hand, like, take the lead with holding his hand. He might like the woman to take the lead kissing him. He might like the woman, to buy him flowers, the woman to get him chocolates, the woman to, like, he might have more feminine house. If he lives by himself, for example, he might have decorated in a more flowery way and have pictures of flowers and stuff like this, and more ornamental stuff, cute ornaments and things like this, right? The difference is between an asexual and a sexual person who's got feminine traits is usually the sex part, the relationship, the sexual intimacy, because often they are more geared towards liking a more stronger, more dominant woman, a woman that takes the lead and control more, a woman that is directional more, and that includes in the bedroom. They'd be more likely to want the woman to dominate them or be on top of them having sex, for example. And this type of thing, a woman saying when she wants sex more and things like that. Which, if you're asexual, say you're an asexual person who is with a more feminine guy, that could work out well, even if it is heterosexual, because he might be more submissive in not having sex. He might be like, okay, you don't want it, darling, that's fine. I'd rather do cooking and clean housework and please you. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean to say it's necessarily like that, but I would say the asexuals that are more feminine traits are more into doing cooking, baking, crocheting, knitting, like all these type of crafty stuff. the people that I know have got more feminine traits. Like tradition what's seen as traditional women stuff around the house, they'd be more likely to be into. They'd be more geared towards having a lot of female friends and being very positive towards feminism and female in general. I personally know that some women are very manipulative, liars, and nasty people, whereas they probably wouldn't see that. So that would cause me an issue, because I need personally I'm quite happy for a guy to have some feminine traits, but I need a guy to be strongly boundary driven personally with other women, and to know that not all women are good. Because, like, otherwise other women can twist that guy around their little finger very easily and manipulate him, and I don't like that. I don't personally want to be with a guy who's easily manipulated by other women. That would drive me nuts. I wouldn't feel secure with a guy like that. So that is the downside of some feminine guys. They are just too feminine in that respect for me personally. It's like they don't have enough boundaries. They don't have enough ability to say no. And obviously some guys that are very feminine, that have a lot of women attention, that can also be an issue as well, where any woman start showing their interest. But this can be true where you've got a masculine woman or a feminine man. Masculine woman. What am I talking about? This can be true if you got a masculine man or a feminine man, because they can just not understand that, they can like the woman's attention too much. They haven't got enough boundaries. A healthy masculine man, for example, will have boundaries in place with other women. A very healthy, strong masculine man. We're not talking about toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is when guys are taught to go around getting as many women as possible, playing mind games, playing with their emotions, like going out on dates with like 100 women a week or whatever they're doing, you know what I mean, and just like basically, being a stud or whatever. And it's how many women can you shag, to be quite blunt with you. That's like toxic masculinity. A healthy masculine guy is someone who chooses to be with a woman and who is protective with her in healthy ways. I think there's a huge scope in how we define femininity or masculinity. The problem these days, Jonathan, is there's a lot of problems with guys in general. There's like a crisis. I don't, I do a lot of research into dating and relationships. I watch a lot of informational videos to educate myself about this. There's actually a crisis going on with men in society today, where they don't know how to be, because a lot of women have now taken on or do a lot of stuff for themselves that traditionally, years ago, stereotypically guys would do. So women have got their own paycheck now. A lot of the time, women have got high-powered jobs a lot, although there's still a pay gap between men and women often. And women can live on their own. They can pay their own bills. They can succeed in their career. They don't need a man's money anymore. Often they drive themselves. Anything that a guy could provide years ago, a lot of the time women could do. Years ago, traditionally, the man would go out to work. The woman would stay at home. But traditionally, very traditionally, a guy would come home, woman would do all the housework, cooking, cleaning for him. This is very traditional gender roles we're talking about. And and the guy would be the provider of the home, paying for the home. He would be the breadwinner. He'd be earning the most amount of money. He'd be expected to have a car, a house for the woman, provide those type of things for her to live in, while she takes care of the home and the kids. This is traditional gender roles. And now we've come up to the 21st century, within 2024, there's actually a crisis going on right now with men, where the modern guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing, because some women, apparently, they don't like doors being held open for them, for example. They don't even like a chair being pulled out for them. These are traditional things that guys would do for women years ago, and some modern women don't like this. They're like, I can open the door myself, you're being sexist. I actually like a guy opening the door for me. I don't have a problem with this. It's known as chivalry. But some modern women, they don't like chivalry. They think a guy is insulting them by not allowing them to open their own door, not allowing them to take their own stool away from the bar so they can sit on there themselves. I like a guy if he's opening my coat for me to put my arms in. I like a guy holding the door open for me. He doesn't have to do these things, but I really do like the guy opening the door for me. I think that's really nice. I think it's pleasant etiquette, shows he cares, shows he puts his woman first. I like that type of thing. But in modern society, a lot of the time, some guys don't know how to behave now, because there is a lot more guys that are displaying more things that other guys were seen as feminine, and some guys are frowned upon for it by their mates, so it's very difficult for guys who are not, trans or non-binary, to understand their place in society now, to understand how they behave in relationships, because it was years ago that they knew kind of like different gender roles. Now they don't know it so much. So what's happening now, from my understanding, is there's more and more experts coming out, more but they're not really experts, but they're more content creators, and they're going around teaching men how to get women, how to have a flashy house, a flashy car, and how to date women in a bad, toxic masculine way, to get loads of women to have sex with them and go on dates with multiple women. This is what's happening. And unfortunately, Dr. K was talking about this very recently, on Diary of a CEO. Watch that episode and you'll see all the crisis I'm talking about. And he's done videos about asexuality on his channel, Dr. K has, and he was talking about the crisis with men in general. We're not talking about specifically asexuals, we're talking about in general society. And he was saying it's because there's been traditional gender roles, but now women don't need men like they used to before, years ago, because women can earn their own money, they can have their own home. Some women are earning more money than guys, and some guys don't like that. Some guys can't hack it, because they're like, and he was saying in this interview that, women still, often women want a masculine guy, and that means the guy's got to earn more money than her. But if women are getting more education, more degrees, then they are earning far more than they used to. They're expecting the guy to go even higher with his education to earn more money than her. So I agree, feminism is greed, but fails to provide an ideal for men to live up to. And it pushes men towards the manosphere, viewing content. So what it's doing is, because there's not enough guys understanding what their position is in dating and relationships anymore, they are tending to go with these guys who are saying, oh, you're in a crisis, let me sort you out, mate, let me man you up and toughen you up. But they're manning them up in the most toxic ways. So I just want people to know on this channel that it's okay for a guy to have feminine traits, and I would rather guys be leaning into those feminine traits. If you're a guy sat here now, knowing in your heart of hearts, knowing you have feminine traits, I want to applaud you first for being here, for knowing and recognizing that. And I want you to start leaning into it. I want you to understand that it's okay if you have some feminine traits, and I don't want you to suppress or repress them. There are women out there who are more masculine these days, who admit they're more masculine, and who do look for more feminine guys and do like feminine guys. Feminine guys have a lot to offer, actually, in the dating world these days, because so many guys out there in the dating world, they're avoidant. They don't want to please women. They want to please themselves. It's kind of the attitude is, well, take me or leave me. I'm me. And they don't want to do anything. So you've got the other extreme. I'm not saying people pleasing is a great trait, because if a guy's people pleasing on purpose and then repressing and suppressing what they really want and feel, they can get resentful of the woman, for example, and that can lead to problems further down the road. So it isn't good just being a people pleaser, right? There's a lot of issues going on with that. But if you look in terms of dating scenario, really, if you're more of a people pleaser guy, you have got some more advantage, in the sense that a lot of these other guys, all they're wanting to do is hook up. They're not really wanting to please a woman at all. They're just looking for something casual, not serious, some fun. This is the type of things you get on dating sites these days. A lot of them already have kids, have already been in a relationship, or they just come out of one and they just want fun, nothing serious, just something casual. And so, if you're a guy who's got feminine traits, who really wants to please a woman, I think the problem is that I see with guys that are more people please on dating sites is they're not bold enough. They're not strong enough to actually communicate with a woman and keep the conversation going in healthy ways. The guys I've come across are very, very feminine traits that want to actually do housework, cooking and clean for a woman, you can't really have much of a conversation with them. It's kind of like, okay, so you like doing cooking and cleaning, you like, how does that work in practice? Like, and it's like they haven't got like a much drive to keep the conversation going. It's kind of like you're leading too much. I like to, I am a natural leader, but personally for me, I like a guy with some feminine traits, but not completely feminine, if you know what I mean, because otherwise you end up with a scenario, which is a con, if you like, is where you are trying to lead too much. You're doing more of the conversation, you're doing more of the talking. It kind of can start feeling one-sided. And the guys that say, "Oh, I want to please a woman," but it's like they're not actually pleasing me at all when they talk to me, because they're barely talking to me. I've had this guy who came on Badoo, right? He's liked me, I think, before on Facebook dating, and he liked me on Badoo as well a long time ago, right? And he's a guy who goes, "Oh, I just want to take care of a woman and please her," right? But he says the same thing in his profiles over and over again. You try and talk to him and you can't talk to him. It's like, like you can't find any information out of him. I don't know if he's got some issue going on or what, because like, to my mind, that is not normal. It's like, I want to please a woman. And it's like, yeah, but you have to have a conversation to please her. You have to be communicating with her to please her. You have to be talking to her. You have to understand her. You know what I mean? It's almost like he's got feminine traits, but also some difficulties in communication at the same time, So it really depends on the individual, obviously, as to how they're going to respond to you, how they're going to interact with you. But, and how far advanced they are down their own self-development journey. But all I'm saying is, some guys who have feminine traits, there are some women out there that do like a guy like that. But I do think they have to be a bit stronger. And that can be the problem. Some of these guys with feminine traits, some of them, not all of them. I know some guys who are around other guys, who can still be in scenarios with other guys, who can still be strong, who can still advocate for themselves and stick up for themselves to a certain extent. They're more likely to have been bullied though at school. The guys I find that have feminine traits, they're more likely to have been put down about it. They're more likely to have had someone noticing they're different. And so they're more likely to be more shy about communicating and less out there. So you've got like things that are really good about guys with feminine traits, and you've got things that are not so good. But every guy obviously is different. You might have a guy that's just, some guys are very, very feminine and submissive in the bedroom only, right? But if you're an asexual who doesn't like sex, then that wouldn't really matter to you. You'd be kind of like, what? You know what I mean? Um, so you have to take each individual scenario, and some guys are more feminine than others. Some guys just might have some feminine traits, like they like to do knitting, they like to do cooking and cleaning, and they like to write poetry. But that's kind of where it ends pretty much, and they're empathetic and sympathetic and sensitive. But they can still be at the office with the guys, they can still understand guys, they can still talk to guys, they can still effectively communicate with guys, and they're still okay to hang around in groups with guys. But usually a guy's got some feminine traits. They will feel more uncomfortable when guys are in general talking about women like a piece of meat anyway. They'll feel more uncomfortable when guys are talking unfavorably about women, because they'll be more feminine themselves. So it's kind of like it's attacking them in some way, if you know what I mean. And they will kind of feel it's horrible, it's harsh, it's nasty, which is nice, because that means they're sensitive towards women's needs, and they're more kind of like defending a woman in their mind. But that's where it usually goes, in their mind, because a lot of the time feminine guys won't speak up necessarily for themselves, they won't advocate for themselves. And so that's why it can be difficult to be in a relationship with one, because they're not communicating effectively with you, they're not sharing how they feel, they're not telling you how they feel, they're not necessarily coming to you with any difficulties. They want you to do that with them, but they're not opening up to you enough. So you have to, encourage them that it's okay to open up. It's okay to share how they feel. It's okay, if they can't do something for you, it's better to tell you that, because, they might be bottling up and resenting you for it later on. Even if they say they're okay to do something, just check in with them every so often. Like, how's it going? How are you feeling? You know, and obviously you've got to watch it on dating sites. Some guys say they're submissive, but are they really? I came across one guy who's submissive, but I wasn't sure if it's going to go the sexual way or not. And first of all, it didn't seem to be, and then it was, and it's like, I'm asexual. He's like, oh, but I need you to do this for me. I'm thinking, well, you're not very submissive, are you? If you're ordering me round what to do. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to be aware that some guys who are submissive are not necessarily feminine or many feminine traits at the same time. They're not necessarily a healthy person just because they've got some kind of like feminine traits or submissiveness, so it's seen as feminine. So just watch that. Watch very carefully the words they use in their profile and the way they actually talk to you or not talk to you much in chat. If there's a discrepancy there, it's probably they're going to be a bit toxic and unhealthy, if not a lot toxic and unhealthy. You have to make sure that what they say in their profile is true. If just it's like, I want to please a woman, like, you've got to understand, like, why do they want to please a woman? Like, what's happened in their past? What, are they a genuine feminine guy, or are they just a people pleaser? Like, if a guy says, oh, I help anyone, I do anything for anyone. I used to think that was a good thing when a guy said, I'll do anything for anyone, but it's not actually. Because when someone people pleases, it means they'll do whatever it takes at their own expense. They're not actually saying how they truly feel. Right? And when people don't say how they truly feel, that's kind of a form of deception, because they're keeping hidden their own feelings and emotions and thoughts about what they really think. You're never really understanding them. They're doing things just to get in your good books, to get in your favor, to be told they're good. And that's not always a good thing. So I try and avoid guys that say on dating sites, I'll do anything for anyone now, because that actually isn't good. If you're in a relationship with that guy and he's doing anything for anyone else, where is the boundaries with him with other women? Where is the boundaries with him and other people in general? Like, if you want to date with him and you expect him to turn up at 6 p.m. to a date, but someone else has got a crisis, what's he going to do? Is he going to please you, or is he going to go and please someone else? And is he just going to, like, oh, I was just doing this. Oh, I was just doing this for this person. Like, there has to be limits. If someone's just people pleasing people all the time, it's not actually healthy. They need to be able to say no. This is talking about being assertive. The guy can't be assertive with other people and with you, then it's not good. He should be able to still say when he doesn't like something, when he's not comfortable with something, and you need to communicate and discuss things with him. Just because you've got a guy who's feminine doesn't mean to say he doesn't have his own opinions, his own thoughts, his own emotions and feelings. So be careful as well that if you are a female who's very strong leadership and very dominant, that you don't completely take over a guy who's submissive or got feminine traits, and you don't overrule him in a toxic way. You've got to be very careful, that you understand that just because a guy's submissive or got feminine traits or got both, it doesn't mean to say you should walk all over him. You should still respect him, and you should still be checking in how he's feeling and what he's thinking and what his needs are. Do you know what I mean? This is healthy relationship. You still got to have a healthy relationship if you're with someone, regardless of whether they're more feminine or masculine. You need to work out how to get the balance right as much as possible. Obviously, if someone's much, like, if you're with a guy who's feminine, then you're not going to be having the usual masculine feminine balance necessarily, unless you're a very masculine female, for example. But guys who are have feminine traits, they will tend to be attracted more to strong female characters, more leadership, more dominant, more powerful, more strong. They'll look up to those type of women who know what they want, say what they mean, be direct, and all this lot. And some women might love that type of thing from and feminine eye, because if you've got for example, if you've got a woman these days who's got their own place and they've got their own job and they're very high powered, and you've got a guy, for example, who's also got a job, really high powered, got his own place, but these people are always into their careers and they're not actually seeing each other very much or spending time with each other, that can be a huge problem for the relationship. If, however, you've got a woman, for example, who's got her own place or high paying job and who's busy a lot of time with her work, but she's got a guy who's more feminine, who just does maybe a 9 to 5 job, who comes home and he's like, oh, I chill out when I do housework, cooking and cleaning, like, let me do that for you, and I'll prepare, I'll prepare a meal, you can relax in front of the TV, or, I'm happy to do this for you. That could work out a lot better. but the guy might not be earning any money. He might even not be, not even be employed. He might want to just do housework, see. But even if he does have a job, he might have a part-time job, or he might just do a job that's not very stressful for, there's just a 9 to 5 office job, not that stressful. He's happy to do housework. Whereas a woman, she might be doing a job where, she's working nights, or she's got a lot of stress involved and stuff, but her job's like got a lot more pay than his has. But she could benefit from being with more of a feminine guy when he's there doing the housework and cooking and cleaning that she doesn't have time to do. And she doesn't want to come home and do that as well, because it'll just stress her out even more. So this is how a feminine guy could be very good for a career woman, a really strong business-minded leadership woman, because he likes a leader, he likes direction, he likes to be told what to do more, he likes to please his woman, and she needs someone who's going to be there for her when she needs him more, because if she's with the same sort of guy that she is, they'll hardly get to spend any time with each other. The house will probably be a mess. No one will have time to like cook proper meals a lot of the time, and it's like, when do they fit in seeing each other in? You know what I mean? So this is how people need to change in their mindset towards dating relationships these days, with traditional masculine and feminine, because obviously a lot of women are earning their own money now. They have their own places. They don't need a guy to provide all the money in the house and everything. They can do that themselves. So a guy should be fitting in a role where he is useful to the woman in other ways. Do you know what I mean? If he's wanting to make himself look a very good prospect on a dating site, if he likes doing the things that she doesn't like to do, that makes her life more easier while she is doing a high-powered job, then it's going to be better for her, right? But women have to have a mindset shift as well to be able to accept more feminine guys. It's all about accepting that people have different qualities in life, regardless of their gender. I have to move my legs a minute. So it's all about accepting that some people can actually complement each other. Because if you've got two people that got similar types of jobs, similar types of personalities, it really cannot work sometimes. So, it can be better if you have got more a person who's more stronger in character, more dominant character, if you like, with a more submissive feminine character. They can work together a lot more beneficially. So I think people, gradually as time goes on, I think more and more people will have to come to understand that it's okay if a guy's got feminine traits. It's okay if a woman's got more masculine traits. A woman doesn't have to be this complete feminine entity anymore, just like a man doesn't have to be this masculine entity anymore, right? Because a lot of the problem is with traditional dating, they're teaching women how to be more feminine, right? But what if you're a female that has some male traits that you like? What happens if you're in your masculine and you're empowered as a female in your masculine? Like, so what do I mean by that? So being in your masculine energy, as they call it, is a lot of the time is when a woman is doing things. It's a doing energy. So a lot of the time, masculinity is seen as things like driving a relationship forward, driving a business forward, taking action, being very directional. It's a doing energy. Femininity is more about being further back and allowing. It's more of an allowing energy. A masculine energy is more of a do energy, right? It's more directional and do, right? And I have some masculine traits. I have masculine energy, and I actually like my masculine energy. I see it as like I'm really female looking, but I have some masculine traits, and I like that, And so that's how a guy who's, for example, feminine would benefit from that, because a guy who's feminine needs usually some leadership, some direction, needs to have someone who's saying things that they are, but also needs some care and sensitivity, So if you've got a female who's got masculine traits, but she's very feminine as well in the sense of soft and gentle and empathetic and all this sort of kind and caring, that can work well with a more feminine guy, because a feminine guy feels he can be himself, he can relax and do things for her and make her happy, which makes him happy if he's enjoying the feminine stuff. But also, she can be giving him more direction, so he's not having to worry about what he's doing. The thing is, in a traditional masculine role, guys expected to know more what he's doing, right? Which, a guy's not a mind reader. Anyone's not a mind reader. You need to communicate your needs, right? But, if a guy is expected to know and do all these things, sometimes guys these days on dating sites, some guys want to take a more laid back approach. They find it difficult to understand how to lead and to lead a relationship. Some guys actually like feminine led relationships these days as well. Where that often is a guy who's more feminine. He wants a female led relationship. So he doesn't have to do the amount of work the guy would be expected to do. He doesn't have to keep driving the relationship forward. I mean, I personally think this is too far for me personally. It's a step too far for me where I'd have to be messaging the guy first. I'd have to be driving the relationship forward. I'd have to be asking to date him and stuff. I do some of this naturally in the beginning, but I get very fed up with it quickly if the guy's not carry on talking to me, if I'm the one that's messaging him more, doing longer messages, if I'm the one driving the dating scenario forward, I feel this is one side he's not really that interested. And with traditional masculine guys, a lot of the time it's because they're not that interested. So you've got to understand, are you dealing with a masculine guy? Are you dealing with a feminine guy? If a guy wants a female-led relationship, what is the ideology behind that? Is it because he is more feminine, or is it just because he doesn't want to do the work it requires of a relationship, usually of the man's role? Is that in a good way, or is that in a bad way? Is it just he can't be asked and he's a lazy git? To be perfectly frank with you, which some guys are open on dating sites. You'll be surprised at how many guys go around saying, "I'm lazy." I can't be bothered to write in my bio. This is too much work. I'm here just for fun. I don't want anything serious. These guys are coming out of this. I'm glad that they're telling the truth. But like some guys are going like, I'm an idiot. It's like, why would I want to date an idiot? You know what I mean? But they're saying this in their profile. You know what I mean? It's just really weird. But some guys are doing that these days. But you have to ask yourself, like, if a guy wants a female-led relationship, what does that mean to him? How would he visualize that? And like, how would that even work in practice? And a lot of the time, these guys who want female-led relationships, they're not actually saying what that means because they're expecting a woman to just know what it means because they're looking for, I guess, for a really strong, dominant woman who knows this type of thing. I don't know this type of thing fully because I'm not. I have some female traits. I'm more of a leader than a follower, but I'm not a dominatrix. I'm not into BDSM stuff, and I'm not naturally knowing what exactly everything is to do with female led. I know it's usually, for example, on Bumble. Bumble is actually part of Badoo, by the way. I was on Bumble some time ago, a few years ago. And so Bumble is a dating app. But I didn't know that Badoo and Bumble are the same company. I think Bumble owns Badoo rather than Badoo owning Bumble. But they're both from the same company. And so Bumble is where women approach guys all the time. That's how the whole app's set up. I got bored with it after a while on there. I just stopped using it because I was just so bored. I think I spent a few hours trying to search for any guys that were remotely like suitable for me, like not wanting children, for example, which was very, very few. And a lot of the guys that didn't even like look up on there. I'm not really into British guys. Facebook dating's got much more foreign guys, but most of them want children or just students, and they're not staying in the UK. Well, I'm still on Badoo, I'm still on Facebook. Dating Bumble, I haven't been on for years. Sometimes I think, should I go on there again? But like Bumble's all about women introducing women, taking the lead. It's purposely set up that way, so guys can't go around introducing themselves. I think guys can like or be in. I don't even know if they can like you. I think you have to like them first, and they like you back. I'm not sure if they. I can't remember. It's such a long time since they use it. Or can they like you, but they can't talk to you unless you talk to them first? I think that's the scenario. But like female led usually means that you're the one taking charge of the whole relationship, the dating. So traditionally it would be the guy's role who would like arrange dates, who would drive the relationship forward, who would be messaging the woman first, who would be keeping the relationship going, who would be, like driving it forward, like, let's go on this date, when shall we meet up again, like that. I'm kind of do I kind of do have those traits myself. Like, for me personally, if I'm in a dating scenario, I want to know, like, when is the guy going to video date with me? Let's get it sorted. Let's get it in the calendar. Make sure we're both there. And I like the guy to. I do really prefer the guy to be driving that type of thing forward. It just, you know what I mean? Like, let's get it done. Like, let's make time for us. You know what I mean? If he's not doing that, it's a bit flaky for me personally, because I'm just, you know what I mean? I'm like, it's not going anywhere. We're not doing anything. What's the point? You know what I mean? It's just like, just keep on chatting. I'm not really just there to keep on chatting. I've got loads of work to do, right? I'm very intentional when I go on dating sites, usually, that I'm interested in a serious relationship. But you've got to be friends with the person first. You've got to chat to them first. You can't just date them, but you should be doing a video date quite early on to find out what the person's like. Otherwise, there's no point in carrying on, you know? But female led usually means, you know, that the woman is setting up all the dates, the woman is driving the relationship forward, the woman's keeping the conversation going. But often I feel that doesn't really work, because usually guys that let a woman do that are doing so because they're not actually that into her. And I think that's where that whole scenario comes unstuck. I think if you're a woman who just is very masculine and does like doing that type of thing, I think it probably works well. But for me personally, I have some male traits, but I'm not that masculine that I want to be doing all the leading. I'm more of a leader than a follower, but I do want a guy who's gonna, you know, who's going to step up to the plate, and who's going to, for example, like if I'm in a club or a scenario, he's interested in me, I want him to walk up to me and he say, "Hey, I really like you," and ask me out on a date. And on a dating site, I want the guy to be approaching me, talk to me, and then keep the conversation going every day, so I know he's interested in me. I still like a degree of masculinity, a degree of the guy driving the relationship forward. I like him being strong like that. I like him being very strongly boundary driven with other women. So where I like some guys with some feminine traits, there's a limit to the feminine traits that I like. If he's all got complete feminine traits, he hasn't got some masculine ones as well, that's not really going to be strong enough guy for me. I like a guy who can just go in front of all his mates and start chatting me up, basically, and not care what his mates think, or include me with his friends even better, and say, "Hey, this is my friends," and introduce me to his friends, you know, and include me in his life with his friends and stuff like that, you know. So I'm like one of the gang, as well as being his potential girlfriend or girlfriend, you know. I like a guy who's strong. I like a guy who does buy me little gifts. I like a guy who does set video dates. I like a guy who does take an interest in me deeply and ask me questions about my life and myself. I like a guy who shows he cares. I like a guy who, if I'm upset, he's like, you know, like, tell me about it, you know, it makes time for me. I like a guy who's got masculine traits like that, if you know what I mean. That's healthy masculinity. You know, when he's wants to care about his woman, he wants to protect his woman, he wants to take action with his woman, he wants to drive things forward. This is healthy masculine. Healthy masculinity is when a guy's not afraid to show his emotions. A guy understands that in order to connect with a woman, he's meant to be strong and protecting and secure role for her, but he's also supposed to be driving the relationship forward, you know, making sure she knows that he cares about her, you know, getting the gifts, you know, driving to see her, not expecting her to go and drive up to see him or go to see him. You know, you know, he's the one that comes to see her the majority of the time. For example, this is like quite very traditional masculine, if you like, and he's driving things forward. He's the driver. He's like driving the car, like, let's do this, let's book this date, then let's book a video date, when are you free, like, you know, which day is best for you, or whatever. Like, I might be seeing my mates these 2 days a week, so what other days are you free that we can match up? Yeah, let's do that. Put in the diary, looking forward to seeing you, darling, you know, this type of thing, you know, like driving it forward. Like, I like a guy who does that. I like those traits. I do drive my own life forward, but I like a guy who does that. I don't want to be like worrying, like, does he like me that much because I'm the one who's doing all the driving in the relationship forward? It just doesn't feel good to me. I particularly like younger guys, and I love the younger guys that just dance with me in the club in front of everyone and really can't care less what people think. They're happy to hold my hand. They're happy to walk down the street kissing and holding my hand. They really couldn't give a shit what people think. They're like 23 years old or whatever, and they're like, I really don't care. I'll introduce you to my mates. You know, like, let's dance all together. You know, like this strong guy. This is personally the guy I need. But I like it if he writes, "Hey, I wrote you a poem today because I was thinking about you." Like, that's a feminine trait that I like, with a masculine drive. You know what I mean? So for me, a guy, you know, who's got some feminine traits is good, but it's like really got to be doing, you know, like the driving forward. I would make the claim that healthy masculinity and healthy femininity very much overlap. Yes, Jonathan, I think you're correct. A healthy masculinity and healthy femininity overlap. So to that point, what happens, or what needs to happen, or what should happen, or what the actual healthy thing is, which people do need to know, I think I've mentioned it on this channel at least once before, is in order to have a healthy relationship in the 21st century we're talking about, a man needs to have some feminine qualities and a female needs to have some masculine qualities, right? The reason for this is because then both men and female can understand each other the most and can communicate in healthy ways the most and be beneficial for each other the most, right? So a guy needs to have sensitivity, empathy, be able to apologize when he's upset his woman. I'm doing, I'm talking about women now, but it could be, same sex genders. But if I'm talking about masculine, feminine, talking about men, women, right? He needs to be having some feminine traits in that way. You call them feminine traits, right? They're just healthy traits to have, right? But they're seen as traditionally feminine traits, but they're healthy traits to have, right? A guy needs these things. The problem with toxic masculinity is guys are driven on their ego, their pride, and they're driven a lot of the time by what they can get out of a woman for their own selfish desires and pleasure. This is toxic masculinity. Healthy masculinity, in order for a guy to understand a woman, he really needs to be having some of those, what we traditionally call feminine traits. He needs to have a soft, gentle side to him when it's needed. He needs to be able to have empathy and sensitivity. If something's wrong in the relationship, he needs to be able to ask, say, look, how are you feeling? How's things going in our relationship at the moment? Like, is there anything I can do to improve it or help you in the relationship or help you in life in general? Like, how are you feeling? Like, he needs to be able to be understanding about the woman, but he can't understand a woman if he's nothing like a woman, right? If you're nothing like something, you can hardly ever understand it. Why do you think asexuals get misunderstood all the time? Because the majority of the world population isn't asexual. They're the opposite to us. So it's very, very difficult for them to understand us. And it's only through repetition of understanding what asexuality is, talking about asexuality, and people's minds being more open to it, which is a more gentle, softer, if you like, feminine thing, then that they can take that information in, right? But if you're just charging like a bull in a china shop and don't care about people's emotions, thoughts, and feelings, you could say you're driving your own life forward, but you're not really helping anyone. So a masculine guy, still needs to have some feminine qualities for him to be good, for him to be a healthy masculine guy. He can have, like, go to the gym, do his sport if he likes, or not if he doesn't like sport. Do cars up, do DIY stuff, but he still needs to have empathy. He still needs to show sympathy. Still needs to be kind and caring and committed. He still needs to be caring towards the female needs. When he has done something wrong that's upset a woman, say he's dismissed her feelings, he needs to say, hey, I was in the wrong. I dismissed your feelings. I'm so sorry for doing that. And he needs to change his behavior. A proper apology is when someone says sorry and they change that behavior. Person who's just saying sorry, that's not a proper apology without behavioral change. There needs to be a behavioral change for a proper apology to have taken place. Similarly, a woman needs to have some masculine traits these days. Why does she need masculine traits and masculine traits? Masculine traits are all about being able to drive your own life forward. Because if you're always relying on the guy all the time, that can be quite needy. And it can be a lot of pressure on him to be able to fulfill your needs and do everything for you. So if you can do things yourself, for yourself, take care of your own life and your own self, that's less of a burden and worry for him. And you can drive your own life forward. You can understand how he is driven with his work, for example, if you're driven with yours. If you're not waiting for him to come home and change the light bulb because you can do it yourself, then it's saved him a job. It's helped him. More and more these days with the finances the way are, some people have to work more than one job, right? He wants to know that, you know how to do your own DIY. If there's a painting job that needs doing at the weekend, he wants to know that you can go and do painting yourself. You can get up a ladder yourself and do painting, because we need to get a move on with the DIY in the house. He's working the weekend, and you've got your weekend free. Instead of going off pampering yourself, doing your nails and your hair and and your your eyelashes or whatever you're doing, you're actually doing the DIY, because that's helpful for him. Then he's not thinking, God, I've done all this work, I'm doing overtime at the weekend, and now I've got to do all the DIY stuff, and I can't leave her to get on with anything. She's not pulling her weight, she's not doing anything. Then like, being able to do stuff yourself is good. It's less of a burden if you can solve some emotional problems yourself, rather than relying on the guy to just kind of fix them for you. Then it's better, it's healthy in any relationship to do that. If you can do some, like, gardening for yourself, right? You can do some digging up for yourself, you can do some weeding for yourself, right? That maybe he would have pulled all the weeds out or something. If you can put some slabs down yourself, there's a patio that needs doing, you put slabs down yourself. It's helping, because maybe he's doing 2 jobs at once or 3 jobs at once to try and make ends meet for you both. You know what I mean? If you can take care of yourself and do some stuff, it's better for him. If you can drive your own life forward, if you can be self-reliant, then he doesn't have to worry about that as much. You know what I mean? He can still drive the relationship forward, as in, arrange dates, as in, he can still be messaging you and stuff when you can. But if you can take care of yourself as well and do DIY and stuff like that, which traditionally what a guy would do, then it's less for him to worry about. If you've got an income coming in as well as him, it's less burden on him. It's less worry for him. And in order to understand a guy and how he works, if you have some more masculine traits, you can understand him better. So really, a woman needs some masculine traits and a man needs some feminine traits for them to meet in the middle and understand each other. And that's really how it should be in the modern day. But not a lot of people are talking about this type of thing. It seems like people are still too fixated in the old masculine and feminine, and they don't know how to blend it together. And it's happening where people like it or not, because more and more women have got their own jobs. They have got their own places. They don't need a guy to be like providing all the money for them, and they don't need a guy to have a big mansion or whatever for her to go and move into. They don't need him to be working all, God knows, all hours to make ends meet, because she, just doesn't want to work, basically. So think about all these things, when you're thinking about getting into a relationship, and decide what you really want. Maybe you are female watching this and you do like a guy with some feminine traits, but just know that every guy's got feminine traits is different, and some guys who've got feminine traits may also be submissive. A lot of the time they probably are, but again, not necessarily. Some guys could just have some feminine traits, like I like doing cooking, cleaning, knitting, and I like and I like writing poetry, for example. That could just be their few feminine traits, and everything else they could be going down the pub with their friends, mostly still having male friends. And do you know what I mean? So be aware of how their feminine traits affect their lives, affect their relationships, how it plays into their everyday life, how it is in their persona. Or but pay particular attention if they've got a lot of feminine traits. Like, how are they with other women? Are they assertive? Are they boundary driven? And how are they in life in general? If they're just getting railroaded all the time, if they're not being able to sustain or maintain a relationship, it could just be they're people pleasing, and no one's really understanding what they are. They're like a chameleon. They're not really showing their true identity. They're not being authentic selves because they're too busy people pleasing, which isn't good. So if they're just people pleasing, you might find they keep coming back on dating sites a lot. If they're submissive, if they're feminine and submissive, because there needs to be a degree of control over themselves and their life. There needs to be something they're doing, and if they can't take care of themselves, but they're saying they want to take care of a woman, and they want to please her and do housework for her and stuff like this, you need to ask the question, like, what's going on? Because there might be actually an issue there where they can't maintain and sustain a relationship, and they just think they're going to do housework, cleaning for a woman, and they're not really going to do much else with their life because they've got some mental health difficulties or something, but they can't actually look after themselves. You can find guys who say they want to take care of a woman, but they're not actually looking after themselves, and they can't look after you properly. They can't even look after themselves, you know? So I would be very careful. I mean, I keep getting people on Badoo, guys keep coming back that were no good for me before. It's like, why do you keep coming back and liking me? That's actually a dominant guy. He keeps just having profiles on, they just keep, I'm not, you know, I'm not a submissive girl. He just keeps like liking me all the time. It's really annoying. And he keeps saying I'm dominant and stuff. And it's like, I'm not interested in a dominant guy, you know? I wouldn't say I'm a dominatrix or anything like that, but I'm not into dominant guys. I don't want a guy who's going to dominate me. I hate those type of guys who tell me what to do with my life or my business or anything like that. If a guy's got a suggestion, that's a bit different. But if it, you know, if I'm doing my business, I expect it and want him to be able to support that, to be able to praise that, to be able to know that I know what I'm doing, you know. Obviously, if he's got a skill and he wants to lend a hand, that's a bit different. But telling me what to do and to change what I'm doing or whatever is not on, you know. So know, if you're a feminine guy, what type of woman you would usually go for if you're into women, and what that would look like in a relationship. How would you expect the woman to behave? What qualities would you want the woman to have? If you want her to have some more masculine traits, which I expect you would be attracted to, like what would that look like in a day-to-day scenario in a relationship? You know, you might be a guy, like I said, who is watching this, who's got feminine traits. But if you've got feminine traits, how do you actually process those, and how do you use them in an actual serious, committed, healthy relationship with a female, for example? Like, what would the woman have to know about you and know that you like to be done and do? So, for example, if I come across a guy with some feminine traits, I still need him to tell me initially what he wants me to tell him. Like, I don't know if he likes to be told what to do in certain scenarios. Just because he's got some feminine traits doesn't necessarily mean to say he likes to be told what to do. But if he's feminine and submissive, and he's like, I'd rather the woman tell me what she needs me to do because he needs leadership in that way, then he needs to communicate that with the woman. She's not a mind reader. So we need to initially say to her, you know, like, okay, this is how it works. Like, I like pleasing a woman, but I need this from a woman. Like, I need the woman to like explain what she wants done each day or each week. Like, when I say I like pleasing a woman, I like pleasing her in these areas of her life, because maybe he only likes doing it in certain areas of life. Maybe it's a sexual thing and he only likes doing it sexually, you know? So you've got to get to the bottom of why, you know, if a guy's got feminine traits, like, has he always been like that? And was there something where he was more trained to be feminine? For example, like I said, if he grew up in a household full of women, he's more likely to be feminine because that's what's instilled in him: feminine qualities, feminine ways of being. He's around women all the time, you know? So if he hasn't got a male role figure or male in his life, he wouldn't really know the behavior of male. He'd be learning female behaviors, feminine behaviors. But unless he had females in his life which weren't very feminine, if you have very butch, masculine women in his life, then that might be difficult for him, you know. So always try and get the backstory if you can. If a guy's on a dating site saying, "Oh, I like a woman who's dominant and I like to please a woman," ask him in what ways he means that. Does he mean it sexually? Does he, you know, like, does he mean it domestically? Like, how would the woman need to be to get him to do what he wants to do for her? You know, does he want to be told what to do? Or does he like to just tell the woman what he wants to do for her? How often does he like to do stuff for the woman? You know, and what are those things he likes to do for the woman? You know, if he likes to please her, scenarios, you know? I think, you know, you need to dive in deeper, because some of these guys who say they like to please a woman, they don't actually know how to do it. And they haven't got long-term relationships in it because they're not communicating effectively of what that looks like. Their expectations maybe are not the same as yours. They haven't even told you their expectations. And they've got something in their brain that they're not relaying to you. So in any scenario, you still need healthy communication. You still need to know exactly what you can and can't do. You know, like if I'm with a feminine guy and I give him a direct order of what I like him to do. I don't like to use the word order, but say I give him a direct order and say, I want this done a certain way. If he's a feminine guy, submissive, and he needs direction, he's going to love that. and he's going to want that. But if I'm a person who's been in a relationship in the past, for example, with a guy who's more masculine and dominant himself, and then he has, been used to telling me what to do, and it's frowned upon if I say anything to him about what I want done, then I'm going to feel weird about asking another guy, can he do this for me, or giving him direction of what to do. Because every person's background and history does affect them and the way they communicate with people. So, even with my best friend years ago, when I wasn't used to asking them to do any, when they didn't do any housework or anything like that for me, because they do some now because I've got fibromyalgia and they help me out a lot. But, before, when they weren't doing that, and they first started doing that for me, they were lost. They're like, tell me what I need to do. I need you to direct me in what I need to do. And I wasn't used to that. Because in the guys I've been with in the past, none of the guys have been like that with me. It's always a case of they'll just do what they want, usually, and the way they want. And I've just got to suck it up. They wouldn't usually want me to tell them what to do. And I wouldn't have usually done that. But because I know that person wants me to tell them what to do, and they don't feel happy, they feel like they're wandering around aimlessly if they don't know what they're doing, I feel obligated, obliged, and happier to tell them what to do, because they're happy they know what to do, then they can help me in the way I need. That's made them happy, that's made me happy. But if you're a female who's not used to doing more leadership role in a relationship, you're not used to being around a feminine guy, you have to learn these skills. Maybe you are more of a leader, but you're still not used to telling guys what to do in the way you like to have things done. Then these are skills you need to develop, but you need to make it, need to know that the actual guy does want that. He's not just saying it. So it took me a while with my best friend to just he's my best friend. We're not dating or doing anything like that. But just with a best friend, him doing housework for me. It's when I broke my ankle, I think was, like, in 2021, that's when he really first started helping me a lot with the housework. Because I was, I couldn't do it. So, and, he's kind of done it more and more since then. But I wasn't used to it. I wasn't used to telling a guy what to do, because I come from a very traditional masculine, feminine parent background. My mum and dad are very traditional gender roles. I mean, very serious traditional gender roles. The woman, my mum does everything housework wise for my dad, even if she's not well, usually. That's just the way they are. My dad's, retired now, but my dad's on permanent oxygen now since this year. So mum's got to do even more for him than she's ever done before. He can't even go near an oven anymore. But so he can't even do the odd lot of washing up for her that he might have done before, So my parents are very traditional gender roles. And even in my past relationships, I've actually probably been with more masculine but toxic masculine guys. And so, I'm not used to telling those type of guys what to do. So when I actually come across a guy who, even as a friend, is wanting my direction, I was like saying, is that all right to tell you what to do? And he's like, yeah, I want to be told what to do, because it makes him more comfortable if he knows what he's doing and the way I like it done, how I like it done, then he knows that he's going to get it right, and he just feels better about himself and I feel better. So it's harder if you're not used to a guy who's got feminine traits, or who's more submissive, or who wants to please a woman. It's harder if you're not used to that. You have to give yourself some time to get used to it. And you have to still check in with that person that they're all right doing those things for you, and not take it for granted. I think that's the worst scenario, is you get a guy with some feminine traits and you take advantage of that scenario, and you don't actually give them praise and thanks for what they're doing. Because part of the reason they want to serve you, if they're submissive, for example, as well as feminine, is they want to please you. So they want to get the validation that they have pleased you. They're looking in some part for validation that they've done a good job, that they've been helpful, that it's felt good to them because they've satisfied you. Do you see what I mean? I mean, if you're asexual looking for a relationship, and you've got a guy with feminine traits who wants to satisfy you in ways which are not sexual. I mean, that is just a beautiful thing, isn't it? That is an absolutely gorgeous thing. If you've got a guy who wants to please you with cooking and cleaning and housework and taking care of you physically and emotionally and like in other ways but sexual, I mean, that's like a dream come true as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? It's a wonderful thing, and a guy who's more feminine, who likes doing housework stuff and likes pleasing that. I mean, there's a joke with asexuals, isn't it? It's cake is better than sex. That we like our food more than sex. A lot of us don't even like sex. I'm not interested in sex. Food is better than sex as a thing. So if a person's like wanting to cook, clean for you, do housework for you, and that, they're bringing your favorite foods to you, and say they did that without sex or sexual expectation, that'd be great, wouldn't it? It's kind of like the asexual dream, is it not? To be baked for or cooked for and enjoy your food without the sex. I think that's something that's really good. So I think you should consider, if you're a female who's got some more masculine traits, for example, you should consider, like, if you're into guys, maybe thinking about guy who's got more feminine traits and some of the beauty of that. And if you're a guy that's got some feminine traits, maybe look for a woman that actually has some more masculine traits, that has more leadership qualities, but who's gentle, kind, and caring at the same time. Because often guys with feminine traits, they are sensitive, they are caring, they are kind, they've got kind hearts. So they need to still have a woman who's understanding and not using them like a doormat. Because there are some women out there that will use those guys like doormats and that will be off having an affair with some other guy for the thrill of and the fact that he's dominant and telling her what to do. I personally will not go around doing that. But like I said, I do like a guy who has personally got some male traits as well. I like a guy who drives the relationship forward. I like a guy who's strong. I like a guy who's boundary driven. I like a guy who's assertive. And some guys with feminine traits don't actually have those qualities as well. So, you have to take things on a individual basis, and you have to understand the pros and cons of a guy who's got some feminine traits, and take each person you meet on their own merits, on what their feminine side means to them and how feminine are they, how many of their feminine traits do they display, how often are they feminine, are they just feminine like in secret, or are they feminine openly out, what I mean? So I think you have to like explore this and have healthy communication. You can't have any healthy relationship without communication. I wasn't understanding this years ago. I thought a guy's just supposed to know what I'm thinking and feeling because, hey, he's my guy. He's supposed to be in tune with what I'm thinking and feeling, right? But it's not the case. People need to communicate and communicate effectively, and they need to be saying and checking in with each other, like, how are you feeling? What are you doing? Like, how do you like this? How is this feeling to you? How are you feeling about this? You need to be checking in, and you need to be seeing how things are for the other person, not just for yourself. And you need to be openly communicating your needs. But please just watch out for people that have toxicity, where they might be saying they're more submissive, but actually they're not. I have come across, I think I mentioned it earlier in this video, that there was one guy on a dating site, Badu actually, and he was talking about being submissive and wanting a dominant woman, and it was to do with dating. And I said that I'm not interested in sex. And at first he said that's okay. But then he started saying, oh, right, well, I'm going to be doing this for you because I'm submissive. What are you doing for me? In other words, sexually. So this is a toxic guy. So just because some guys are submissive doesn't mean to say they're not toxic. And a guy, I think, could be submissive in the bedroom without having many feminine traits at all. So don't confuse feminine traits with submissiveness. They are two different things, but you can often find a guy who's got feminine traits is submissive as well. But I can find guys on dating sites that are submissive in the bedroom sexually, but they're not actually submissive in the rest of it. If a guy's saying he's submissive, yeah, he's expecting me to do stuff for him when he's meant to be the submissive one. Then, sexually I'm talking about, then this isn't good. This is toxic, really. So be very careful, that you don't end up looking at dating profiles and not understanding that some guys, even though they've got some feminine traits, or they say they want to please a woman, they say they're submissive, find out the 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 scenario behind that. Okay, find out whether it's actually the fact he's naturally got female qualities, rather more female feminine qualities than masculine, or if there's some toxicity behind it, if he's got some twisted warped idea that he's submissive for a woman in certain areas of his life, but the rest of it she does what he tells her to do, because this is how this guy was on Madhu. He was very bad. It's like, oh, I like a woman who's more dominant, I'm submissive, but then I'm doing this for you, so what are you going to do for me? To me, that is not a submissive guy at all. That's a very dominant, controlling, manipulative guy, and he just, God knows, maybe he just wants like a woman to be on top of him in the bedroom, but that's as far as it goes, and he wants to tell her to do that as well. So that's not a submissive feminine guy, really. He might have some submissiveness in a kinky way, but that's not good. So please be careful on dating sites. Read behind the lines, between the lines, whatever you want to call it. Read behind the scenes. Find out what actually is up. Because there are, like I've seen a guy who keeps coming back, like I said, he was on Facebook dating, now he's on Badoo, and he liked me again. Right? And whenever he's on about he wants to look after a woman, but whenever I've talked to him, he barely speaks to me. How can he look after a female if he likes a female, but he doesn't even speak to her? That's not actually helping her. That's not actually, like looking after her. That's not actually being really submissive to her if he's not even talking to her, I would argue. It's being passive, not submissive. That's a different thing. If a guy's being submissive to a woman, I would expect him to still talk to the woman and basically do more of what she wants, if you know what I mean. Cater to her needs. But if he's just not even speaking to her, that's being passive. That's not being submissive. Submissive, like you submit to someone, you submit to their wishes, you submit to what they want, you submit to what they do, to what they tell you. But someone who's passive is someone who doesn't really speak that much, who doesn't really interact that much, who is taking a backseat role, who to the point where they're nearly non-existent. You can't have a healthy relationship, even if there's a guy with feminine traits who's submissive or submissive as well as feminine traits. He's still got to be able to effectively communicate with you. He's still got to be active in that relationship with you, in that dating scenario. You can't just have a dating or relationship scenario on your own. It's teamwork. Whether the guy's got more feminine traits or not, it's a teamwork. If the guy's got more feminine traits, you've got more masculine traits, then that's how you balance each other out. But it's still a team. Look, I've got balloons now. Look at my special effects on here. It's amazing. I love my special effects. I don't know why they happen for me, but it's magic. It's magic. YouTube loves me, don't you, YouTube? Woo! So yeah. So always pay attention to what they're saying in their profile and the actions they're actually taking. And if they're not actually doing what you think they're supposed to do with their bio, there's a discrepancy there, which is a red flag to begin with. So be very, very careful of these types of people. And if they can't communicate effectively with you, they can't have a healthy relationship. And you don't want to be in a relationship that's unhealthy. So, find out the reasoning behind why they have feminine traits. Find out if it's a natural part of their personality. Find out if they're around all women when they were young or predominantly grew up with women. And basically, they've been trained that way, if you like, programmed that way, conditioned that way. Find out, like if they've just had bad experiences with guys as well, which can mean that they've decided to have more feminine traits is healthier for them and better for them. And also, just find out, what those feminine traits mean to that person. Are they just a few traits, or are they submissive as well? If they're submissive, what do they like to submit to? How do they like to be submissive? And if they like a woman to lead, like what ways do they want her to lead? Do they just want her to lead as in being directional, telling him what to do in certain scenarios, like what housework she wants doing, what cooking and cleaning? Or does he expect her to tell him what job to do, what to wear, what to say in scenarios, like really be dominant, really like take over his life for him because he doesn't want to have that control. He wants the woman to have all the control or something like that. possibly because he's indecisive and doesn't like making decisions himself. Are there healthy reasons behind the way he is? Or are there unhealthy reasons, or a bit of both? Like, find out his background, find out more about him, find out why he wants to people please if he does, find out why he wants to help the woman, find out why he likes doing housework if he does, find out why he's got feminine traits, find out how these feminine traits play out in his relationships with other people, dating scenarios, friends, family. Does his family even know he's got feminine traits, or is he hiding that from them? Because if you are dating this guy or in a relationship with him and you go to his family, he may not behave that way than he does with you. It might only be in private, in secret, he's got more feminine characteristics and traits. And to the public, he's not like that. And can you accept that about him? Or does it feel like, that you don't know who he is? He's like a chameleon. He's changing himself all the time, and you feel disconcerted by that. And you feel like disorientated, and you feel like you don't really know him. So, you need to be looking at all these case scenarios, trying to find out more about him, why he is feminine, and what that means in terms of relationship and dating scenario and how that would play out. I wish you the best of luck, and just know if you're a guy with some feminine traits, it's okay to have them. You just need to explain to people more what that means for you and be communicative about it and be proud that you have some qualities that a lot of modern toxic masculine guys don't have, and you have a lot to offer a woman. You can use your feminine traits to attract women who want kind, caring guys who want to be helpful and who want to do things to please their woman. There are women out there that would be refreshed to have a guy like that. But like I said, this whole video is about pros and cons of guys with feminine traits. So watch this through again, this video, if you've not seen the whole of this video, and then you can make an informed choice or decision if dating or being in a relationship with a guy with feminine traits is going to be right for you, or you think it's a possibility. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Grab my Asexual Perspectives bestselling book on Amazon to learn more about love, life, relationships from an asexual point of view. And I'll see you soon next video live stream. Lots of love. Thank you to the people who are in chat, including Jonathan. I think it's Elroy. I think it is. And lots of love to you all, and take care. If you've got any comments, queries, questions, pop them down this video below. And I'll see you soon next video live stream. Lots of love. Bye.